The massive space station orbited the planet Vex Prime like a silver ring. Inside, the hallways stretched for miles, filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some had scales, others had fur or smooth metal-like skin. But only one had soft pink skin and walked alone through the crowded corridors. Kang Hyun was the first human to attend the Interstellar Combat Academy. At 23 years old, he was far from home. Earth had joined the galactic community just 5 years ago, and most aliens still saw humans as newcomers. Some were curious. Others were dismissive. Many simply ignored him. Hyun walked into the weapons demonstration hall and took his seat at a desk near the back. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing battles from thousands of years ago. Energy weapons lit up the darkness like fireworks. Shields flickered and died. Ships exploded in silent bursts of light. The other cadets filed in, chatting in languages Hyun was still learning. His translator earpiece worked well enough, but some meanings got lost. He watched them take their seats, noting who sat with whom. The large, gray-skinned Gordanians sat together, their massive frames making the desks look like toys. The Sari, with their color-changing scales, clustered on the left side. The Threnians, with their 4 arms and blue armor-like skin, spread throughout the room. Instructor Velmora entered through the main door. She was Threnian, standing nearly 7 feet tall. Her 4 arms moved independently as she activated the room's control systems. Her chitinous armor plating caught the light, making her look like a warrior from ancient legends. She had trained soldiers from 47 different species. She was considered one of the best weapons instructors in the galaxy. "Attention, cadets," she said. Her voice carried easily through the hall without needing amplification. "Today marks the beginning of your weapons specialization course. Over the next semester, you will learn advanced combat techniques from every major civilization in the Federation." The holographic displays changed, showing weapons of incredible complexity. Energy rifles that could punch through starship hulls, molecular disruptors that could tear apart matter at the atomic level, gravity weapons that could crush tanks into balls of compressed metal. "Your first assignment," Velmora continued, "is to demonstrate your species' greatest contribution to weapons technology. You have 1 week to prepare. Each of you will show the class how your people changed warfare in the galaxy." Excited chatter filled the room. Cadets immediately began discussing their plans. Hyun heard them talking about plasma cannons, neural weapons, and antimatter devices, technologies that could destroy cities or disable fleets. Hyun said nothing. He ran his hand along the smooth surface of his desk, feeling the composite material under his fingers. Earth had no such weapons. Humanity still used gunpowder and metal bullets. In a galaxy where weapons could vaporize targets from orbit, human firearms were considered laughably primitive. A loud voice boomed across the room. "What about the human? What will he show us? A pointed stick?" Laughter erupted. Hyun looked up to see Thrix, a massive Gordanian with gray skin like stone. He was grinning, showing teeth that could bite through metal. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, and he stood nearly 8 feet tall. "Come on, human," Thrix continued. "Your people just discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. What weapons could you possibly have that we haven't been using for thousands of years?" More laughter. Even some of the instructors smiled. Hyun felt his face grow warm, but he kept his expression neutral. His grandfather had taught him that reacting to mockery only encouraged it. Velmora raised one of her 4 hands. "Silence. Cadet Thrix, every species has something to contribute, even if—" She paused. Her 3rd and 4th arms tapping together in what Hyun had learned was a sign of uncertainty. "Even if humanity is still developing their technology." The words were meant to be supportive, but they stung worse than Thrix's mockery. At least Thrix was honest about his contempt. Velmora's doubt was wrapped in politeness. "Cadet Kang," Velmora said, looking directly at him, "you have 1 week. Use the Academy's resources. If you need help accessing human military databases, let me know." "Thank you, Instructor," Hyun said quietly. The class continued, with Velmora explaining the requirements for the demonstrations. Safety protocols, time limits, target specifications. Hyun listened with half his attention. The other half was already working through the problem. He couldn't bring firearms. The Academy's regulations prohibited chemical reactions inside the demonstration hall. No explosives, no gunpowder, no combustion. Even if he could, guns needed ammunition. They needed maintenance. They needed parts that didn't exist on this station. After class, Hyun remained at his desk while the others left. He examined the desk more carefully now. It was made from some kind of flexible polymer, designed to be light but strong. The legs attached with pressure joints allowing them to be adjusted or removed. The surface was smooth and unblemished. Deep thoughts? Hyun looked up to see a young woman standing nearby. She was human, with short black hair and oil stains on her uniform. He recognized her from the cafeteria. Lee So-min, she said, sitting on the desk next to his. Engineering track. You're Kang Hyun, right? The combat cadet. Yes, Hyun said. I heard about Thrix's comments, So-min said. That guy's a jerk. Don't let him get to you. I'm not, Hyun said. I'm just thinking about the assignment. So-min looked at him curiously. What are you going to demonstrate? I mean, we don't exactly have plasma cannons back home. No, Hyun agreed. We don't. They sat in silence for a moment. Then So-min said, You know, the instructors here expect us to fail. Both of us, all humans. They think Earth only got into the Federation because of politics. They're waiting for us to prove we don't belong. Hyun traced his finger along the edge of the desk. Then we won't give them that satisfaction. You have a plan? The beginning of one, Hyun said. He looked at the desk, then at the holographic projectors mounted in the ceiling. So-min, you're in engineering. Can you tell me about the materials used in these desks? Tensile strength, flexibility, breaking points? So-min raised an eyebrow. Sure, I can pull up the specs. Why? Hyun smiled slightly. Because I'm going to make a weapon out of them. That night, Hyun lay in his small quarters staring at the ceiling. The room was basic, just a bed, a desk, and a small window showing the stars beyond. He thought about his grandfather, who had raised him in the mountains of Korea after his parents died. The old man had taught him many things. How to hunt, how to track, how to survive in the wilderness. One lesson stood out in his memory. Hyun had been 12 years old. Frustrated because he couldn't afford a new hunting rifle, his grandfather had taken him into the forest with nothing but a knife. Humans don't need machines to be dangerous, the old man had said. We need eyes to see, hands to shape, and the knowledge our ancestors gave us. That's our real weapon. We adapt. By sunset that day, they had made a bow from a fallen tree branch and arrows from straight saplings. Hyun had killed his first deer with that bow, not because it was powerful, but because he had learned to use what was available. Now, floating in space thousands of light years from Earth, Hyun realized his grandfather had given him exactly what he needed. Not advanced technology, but something more fundamental. The knowledge that humans had survived for hundreds of thousands of years by being clever, adaptable, and resourceful. He closed his eyes and began to plan. He had 1 week to show the galaxy what humanity could do, 1 week to prove that sometimes the oldest weapons were the most dangerous. Not because they were powerful, but because everyone had forgotten to defend against them. Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. But Hyun felt warm inside. He knew exactly what he was going to do. The Academy's library was quiet in the early morning hours. Most cadets were still sleeping, but Hyun had been awake since before the artificial sunrise. He sat at a terminal, scrolling through Earth's military database, looking for anything that might help. The problem was clear. Every weapon humanity had ever developed required something the Academy wouldn't allow. Firearms needed gunpowder. Explosives needed chemicals. Even simple crossbows needed metal parts and specialized materials. The Academy's demonstration hall had strict safety protocols. No chemical reactions. No electromagnetic discharges. No molecular disruption. All Hyun had access to was what existed in the hall itself. The composite desks. The holographic projectors. The basic atmospheric controls. That was it. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. 2 days had passed since the assignment was given. He had 5 days left. His fellow cadets were already practicing their demonstrations. Yesterday, he had seen Thrix testing a plasma rifle that could melt through steel plating. The Gordanian had made sure Hyun was watching, grinning the whole time. You look terrible, a voice said. Hyun turned to see So-min approaching with 2 cups of something that looked like coffee but smelled like flowers. She handed him one. It's veal tea, she explained. It's not coffee, but it'll keep you awake. You've been here all night, haven't you? Most of it, Hyun admitted. He took a sip. It tasted better than it smelled, at least. So-min pulled up a chair and looked at his terminal screen. It was displaying a long list of prohibited items and materials. Still stuck? Everything I can think of requires materials I can't use, Hyun said. Bows need wood or metal, arrows need specific materials for the heads. Even slings need the right kind of cordage. What about the desk materials? Soman asked. I pulled up the specifications like you asked. The polymer is actually pretty strong. It's designed to flex without breaking, and it has a high tensile strength. Hyun nodded slowly. He had been thinking about that. Can you show me the numbers? Soman pulled up her datapad and displayed the material properties. Hyun studied them carefully. The desk polymer could bend significantly before breaking. It returned to its original shape after stress. It could support considerable weight. It's almost like fiberglass, Hyun murmured. Or bamboo. What? Flexible materials that store energy when bent, Hyun explained. That's how bows work. You bend the limbs, they want to spring back, and that stored energy launches the arrow. Soman's eyes widened. You're going to make a bow out of the desks. Maybe, Hyun said. But I need to test the material first. And I need to figure out the string situation. A bow is useless without a proper string. They spent the next hour running calculations. How much the desk material could bend. How much force it could store. What kind of arrow velocity they could theoretically achieve. The numbers were encouraging, but numbers on a screen weren't the same as a working weapon. The holographic projectors, Soman said suddenly. They use high-tensile synthetic cord in their mounting systems. Strong enough to support heavy equipment. Hyun looked at her. Can we access that? It's part of the classroom equipment, Somin said with a shrug. Technically available for educational purposes. I could probably get my hands on a length of it. For the first time in days, Hyun smiled. That would help. Over the next 2 days, Hyun became a regular fixture in the empty demonstration hall during off hours. He would sit at different desks, testing their flexibility, measuring their dimensions, noting which ones had the best properties. The maintenance staff grew used to seeing him there, this strange human sitting alone, pressing on desk surfaces and muttering to himself. Other cadets noticed too. Word spread that the human was spending all his time in the demonstration hall, but nobody knew why. Thrick started a rumor that Hyun was too embarrassed to prepare anywhere else because his weapon was so primitive. The mockery grew worse. One evening, as Hyun was examining a desk near the front of the hall, Lyra approached him. The sorry cadet had been one of the few who hadn't openly mocked him. Her scales shifted from green to a curious blue as she watched him. What are you doing, Kang Hyun? She asked, her voice soft and hissing slightly. Testing materials, Hyun said simply. For what? Hyun looked at her, trying to decide how much to say. For my demonstration. Lyra's scales flickered with yellow patterns. Amusement, Hyun had learned. Everyone thinks you're going to fail. They think humans don't belong here. I know, Hyun said. Do you? Lyra sat on one of the desks, her tail curling around the leg for balance. My people, the Sari. We weren't always strong. When we first joined the Federation, we were considered weak. Our energy weapons weren't as powerful. Our ships weren't as fast. But we proved ourselves through cleverness, not strength. She looked at him directly. I think humans might be the same. You don't have the weapons or the technology, but you have something else. I just can't figure out what. Adaptability, Hyun said quietly. That's what we have. We're good at using whatever is available. Lyra's scales shifted to thoughtful purple. Show them that, Kang Hyun. Show them what makes humans different. After she left, Hyun sat alone in the hall for a long time. His mind drifted back to his childhood, to the mountains of Korea where his grandfather had raised him. The old man had been a traditional archer, teaching Hyun the ancient art from the age of 5. The bow is honest, his grandfather used to say. It doesn't lie to you. If you're weak, it shows. If you're sloppy, it shows. But if you're patient and you practice, it rewards you. The bow is a mirror, boy. It reflects who you really are. Hyun remembered the hours spent in the forest shooting at targets made from straw and wood. His arms had ached. His fingers had blistered. But slowly, arrow by arrow, he had learned, not just how to shoot but how to see, how to read the wind, judge the distance, feel the rhythm of his own heartbeat. His grandfather had shown him how to make a bow from a fallen tree, how to select the right wood, shape it carefully, test its strength, how to make arrows from straight branches, fletching them with feathers, pointing them with stone or bone. Humans don't need metal or machines, the old man had told him. We survived on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years before we had either. We survived because we could see what others couldn't. A tree wasn't just a tree. It was a bow, a shelter, firewood, tools. We saw potential everywhere, that was the key, Hyun realized. Not trying to match the aliens' technology, but showing them what technology couldn't do, showing them that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. On the 5th day, Salman met him in the demonstration hall with a coil of synthetic cord. "This is from the projector mounting system," she said. "It's rated to support 200 kilograms of weight." Hyun took the cord, testing its strength. It was thin but incredibly tough. Perfect for a bowstring. "Thank you," he said. "Are you really going to do this?" Salman asked. "Make a primitive weapon in front of the entire academy?" "Yes, they're going to laugh at you. They're going to say it proves humans are backwards." "Maybe," Hyun said. "Or maybe they'll learn something." Salman shook her head but smiled. "You're either really brave or really crazy." "Probably both," Hyun admitted. That night, Hyun didn't sleep. He sat at his desk in his quarters, sketching designs on a data pad. He drew the curve of the bow, calculated the force required, estimated the velocity of the arrow. He planned every step of the demonstration, from how he would disassemble the desk to how he would construct the arrow. But more than that, he thought about what he would say. How he would explain to a room full of advanced species that sometimes old didn't mean obsolete, that sometimes simple was better than complex. As the artificial sun rose over the station, Hyun felt calm for the first time since the assignment was given. He knew what he had to do. He knew it would work. And most importantly, he knew that win or lose, he would show the galaxy something they had forgotten, that humans were survivors, and survivors didn't need the best weapons. They just needed to be clever enough to make do with what they had. Tomorrow was demonstration day. Tomorrow the galaxy would see what human ingenuity really meant. The demonstration hall was packed. Every seat was filled with cadets from across the galaxy. Instructors lined the back walls, their various appendages crossed or folded in postures of attention. Word had spread about the humans' mysterious demonstration, and nobody wanted to miss what promised to be either spectacular or spectacularly embarrassing. Hyun sat in the front row, his hands resting calmly on his knees. His heart beat steadily in his chest. Around him, the other cadets whispered and pointed. He ignored them, focusing on his breathing the way his grandfather had taught him, in through the nose, out through the mouth, slow and steady. Velamora stood at the front of the hall, her forearms spread wide. "Today you will witness the weapons that shaped galactic history. Each cadet will demonstrate their species' greatest contribution to warfare. Remember, you are not just showing machines. You are showing the ingenuity and spirit of your people." The demonstrations began. First came a Voltan cadet named Rix. His species were small, barely 4 feet tall, but their gravity manipulation technology was legendary. He activated a device the size of a fist. The air shimmered, and suddenly the target drone at the far end of the hall crumpled like paper being squeezed by an invisible hand. The metal groaned and twisted until the drone was compressed into a ball no larger than Hyun's head. The hall erupted in applause. Velamora nodded approvingly. "Excellent demonstration of Voltan gravity well technology, capable of crushing starship hulls from a distance." Next was Lyra. The sorry cadet's scales flickered nervously through several colors before settling on confident red. She held up a small device that looked like a crystal wrapped in silver wire. When she activated it, the target drone's lights went dark. It hung in the air completely still. "Neural disruption," Lyra explained. "It sends a signal that overloads electronic systems and organic nervous systems. The target is paralyzed but not destroyed. Useful for capture missions." More applause. Hyun watched carefully, noting how each weapon worked. They were all impressive, the product of thousands of years of research and development. Then came Thrix. The massive Gordanian walked to the demonstration area carrying what looked like a cannon. It was nearly as long as Hyun was tall, covered in glowing blue energy cells. Thrix grinned as he aimed it at a target drone. "This is a plasma devastator," Thrix announced loudly. "Standard Gordanian military issue. Effective range of 200 meters. Can melt through starship armor." He fired. A bolt of superheated plasma streaked across the hall, hitting the target drone dead center. The drone didn't just break apart. It melted, glowing white-hot before dissolving into drops of molten metal that splattered on the floor. The audience gasped. Even the instructors looked impressed. Thrix turned to face the crowd, his grin even wider. His eyes found Hyun and his expression became mocking. "That's how a real weapon works," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not with sticks and stones, but with power and technology." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Several cadets glanced at Hyun, waiting for his reaction. He remained still, his expression neutral. 5 more demonstrations followed. Molecular disruptors, antimatter projectors, sonic weapons that could shatter bone, each one more impressive than the last. Each one showcasing technology that had taken centuries to develop. Finally, Velmora consulted her datapad. "Last demonstration," she announced. Cadet Kang Hyun representing Earth and humanity. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to Hyun as he stood and walked to the demonstration area. He carried nothing in his hands. No weapon, no device, no equipment of any kind. Confused murmurs filled the air. Thrick started laughing. The human forgot his weapon. Or maybe Earth has nothing to show? More laughter joined his. Even some of the instructors looked puzzled. Velmora held up one of her 4 hands for silence. "Cadet Kang, where is your demonstration equipment?" Hyun gestured to the hall itself. "To the desks, the projectors, the very room around them. I need only what's here, Instructor." "Everything I need is already present." The confusion grew louder. Cadets turned to each other, trying to understand what he meant. Velmora's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of uncertainty. "Permission to proceed?" Hyun asked. Velmora studied him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Permission granted. Show us what humanity has to offer." Hyun walked to the nearest desk. It was the one he had selected days ago after testing dozens of them. He gripped the main support beam, a long composite rod about 6 feet in length. With a sharp twist and pull, he detached it from the desk frame. The hall watched in complete silence now. Nobody was laughing. They were too confused to laugh. Hyun held the rod in both hands, feeling its weight and balance. Then he began to apply pressure at specific points along its length. The polymer was flexible, designed to bend under stress. He used the desk's own weight-bearing joints, still attached to the rod, to create controlled stress points. Slowly, carefully, the straight rod began to curve. Hyun's muscles stood out on his arms and shoulders as he worked, coaxing the material into the shape he needed. The polymer resisted at first, but he understood its properties now. He knew exactly how much force to apply and where. A bow began to take shape. Someone in the audience gasped. Others leaned forward, trying to see better. Velmora's 4 eyes focused intently on Hyun's hands. Next, Hyun walked to the holographic projector system. He reached up and carefully removed a length of synthetic cord from the mounting hardware, the same cord Soman had identified for him. He tested its strength, pulling hard on both ends. It held firm. He tied the cord to one end of the curved rod, using a knot his grandfather had taught him. Then he bent the rod further, bringing the other end close enough to tie the cord there too. When he released his pressure, the rod tried to straighten, but the cord held it in its curved shape. The bow was complete. The hall was absolutely silent. Even the instructors seemed frozen, unsure what they were witnessing. Hyun wasn't finished. From another desk leg, he selected a straight piece of composite material. Using the sharp edge of a desk's corner brace, he began to shape it. The polymer was tough but not impossible to work with. He carved a notch at one end for the string. He shaped the other end to a point. From a thin piece of polymer, he fashioned crude fins for the back. In 15 minutes, standing in front of hundreds of watching aliens, Hyun had created a functional bow and arrow from classroom furniture. He held up the bow for everyone to see. "This is a bow," he said clearly. "Humans invented this weapon approximately 8,000 years ago. We didn't need energy from stars or atoms. We didn't need computers or power sources. We used our muscles, our understanding of physics, and the materials around us." Velmora approached, her 4 arms spread in a gesture of complete bewilderment. "Cadet Kang, what have you made?" "I see no power source. No energy matrix. No targeting computer." "That's correct, Instructor," Hyun said. "The weapon is simple. The power comes from me. The targeting comes from my eyes and my practice. The materials came from this room." He knocked the arrow on the string, demonstrating the motion. "Everything else, the calculations, the trajectory, the force comes from the person using it. The bow is just a tool. The real weapon is human adaptability." Thrick stood up from his seat. "A bent stick and a splinter? This is humanity's great weapon. My plasma devastator could cut that toy in half. It's useless." Velmora raised a hand for silence, but her expression showed doubt. Cadet Kang, our demonstration targets are military-grade combat drones. Reinforced armor plating. They withstood plasma fire at 200 meters. What can your bow possibly do against them? Hyun looked at the target drone hovering at the 50-meter mark. Then he looked at Velmora. Move it to 100 meters, Instructor. Gasps echoed through the hall. The energy weapons had barely been effective at that range. Several cadets started laughing again, certain this was madness. Velmora's mandibles clicked rapidly. She was clearly doubtful, but she signaled to the technician. The combat drone glided smoothly to the far end of the hall, its armor plating gleaming under the lights. Hyun raised the bow. The hall fell silent again. He drew the string back to his anchor point, feeling the resistance of the bent polymer rod. The bow creaked under the strain, but it held. The synthetic cord cut slightly into his fingers, but he ignored it. He focused on the target. Not with a computer or sensors, but with his eyes. His mind, trained through years of practice, calculated automatically. Distance, gravity, the slight air currents in the climate-controlled hall, the rhythm of his own breathing. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Hyun felt his grandfather's presence as if the old man were standing beside him in that hall full of aliens. He heard the words spoken years ago in a Korean forest. Don't think, boy. Feel. The bow is not separate from you. It's part of you. Trust your body. Trust your training. Hyun released the string. The arrow flew. It wasn't bright like plasma. It didn't hum with energy like the molecular disruptors. It made no sound except the whisper of air moving past the crude fletching. Just a simple projectile made from desk materials, moving through space at 90 meters per second. The combat drone hung motionless at 100 meters, its sensors sweeping the hall. Those sensors were designed to detect energy weapons, heat signatures, electromagnetic pulses, radiation. They were calibrated for threats that glowed, hummed, or radiated power. The arrow appeared on none of them. The drone's computer brain, processing millions of calculations per second, saw no threat. No energy spike. No heat bloom. No electromagnetic disturbance. Just a small piece of matter moving through the air. No different from dust or debris. It did nothing to defend itself. The arrow struck the drone's sensor cluster with a sharp crack that echoed through the silent hall. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the drone began to spin, smoke trailing from the impact point. The arrow had punched completely through the armor plating, its crude point driven by pure kinetic force. The drone's anti-gravity system flickered, damaged by the arrow's passage through critical systems. The drone fell. It hit the floor with a crash of metal and sparking electronics. The arrow was still embedded in it, sticking out like a flag claiming territory. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire hall seemed frozen in time. Hyun lowered the bow, his heart pounding but his face calm. He had felt the shot was good when he released it. The bow had felt right. The arrow had flown true, just like the thousands of arrows he had shot in the mountains back home. Then the hall exploded with noise. Cadets were on their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some in disbelief, others in amazement, and several in outrage. The translator in Hyun's ear struggled to keep up with all the voices. Impossible. How did it penetrate? There was no energy signature. Did you see that? Thrix's voice boomed above all the others. Impossible. The armor should have stopped it. There was no power source. His face had gone dark gray with shock and anger. Velmora was already moving toward the fallen drone, her forearms working quickly to examine the damage. The other instructors followed, clustering around the wreckage. They spoke in low voices, their expressions serious. Hyun remained standing in the demonstration area, still holding the bow. Salman was in the crowd, her face split by a huge grin. She was clapping, though her applause was lost in the chaos. Lyra's scales had gone brilliant gold with excitement. After what felt like hours but was probably only a minute, Velmora straightened. She held up one hand and gradually the noise died down. Her four eyes looked at the drone, then at Hyun, then back at the drone. Kinetic penetration, she said, her voice carrying through the hall's speakers. The projectile transferred all its momentum into a focused impact point. No energy signature to detect, no heat bloom to track, no electromagnetic pulse to shield against. She turned to face the assembled cadets and instructors. This drone's armor is designed to disperse energy. Heat, radiation, electromagnetic force. It spreads those threats across the entire surface, making them ineffective. But a solid projectile concentrating force on a single point? She gestured to the arrow. That's a different kind of threat entirely. A crystalline veil instructor spoke up, his voice like wind chimes. But the energy output is minimal. The force of that bow cannot be more than, 50 or 60 kilograms? Our armor should stop such a weak impact. Hyun stepped forward. With respect, sir, your armor is designed for energy dissipation. It's made to spread out and absorb threats, but kinetic impact works differently. All the force concentrates on one point, like a hammer hitting glass. He walked to the drone and carefully pulled his arrow free. In human warfare, we learned early that you don't always need overwhelming force. Sometimes you need to find the weak points, gaps in armor, vulnerable areas, structural failures. We didn't try to overpower defenses. We found ways around them. Velamora picked up the bow, examining it with all four hands. Her mandibles clicked steadily, a sign of intense thought. And you made this weapon from classroom furniture. In less than 20 minutes, yes, instructor. Using only materials present in any standard facility. Yes, instructor. Without any power source, without any technological components, without any specialized tools. Yes, instructor. She set the bow down carefully as if it might explode. Cadet Kang, do you understand what you've demonstrated here? Hyun met her eyes. I've shown that effective weapons don't always require advanced technology. No, Villamora said slowly. You've shown something far more significant. You've demonstrated a weapon system that's completely invisible to our standard detection methods. A weapon that can be manufactured from common materials anywhere in the galaxy. A weapon that requires no power supply or ammunition logistics. And a weapon that defeats the defensive systems we've spent thousands of years developing. The hall fell silent again as the implications sank in. A senior military observer, a Threnian commander named Vane, pushed through the crowd. His armor was decorated with marks of rank and battle honors. Instructor Velamora, I need to speak with Cadet Kang immediately. Within minutes, Hyun found himself in a private briefing room with Velamora, Commander Vane, and 3 other high-ranking military officials from different species. They sat around a table, all of them staring at the bow Hyun had placed in the center. Commander Vane spoke first. Cadet, can this technology be scaled? Can it be mass-produced? Hyun thought carefully before answering. The bow itself is limited by the strength of the person using it. A stronger person can use a more powerful bow, but there are physical limits. However, Earth has other kinetic weapons that don't rely on personal strength. Crossbows that store energy mechanically, slings that use centrifugal force, throwing spears with special grips that increase leverage. All of them require no power source. Asari Admiral leaned forward, her scales showing patterns of concern. You're describing a complete revolution in asymmetric warfare. Small groups could manufacture these weapons anywhere. They leave no energy signatures for our sensors to detect. They require no supply chains for ammunition or power cells. I'm describing, Hyun said carefully, what humans did for 200,000 years before we discovered electricity. We survived and thrived using these methods. We became the dominant species on Earth not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We became dominant because we could look at anything around us and figure out how to turn it into a tool or a weapon. The room fell quiet. The officials exchanged glances, their expressions troubled. Finally, Commander Vane spoke. Cadet Kang, I'm going to be direct. This demonstration has significant strategic implications. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare has followed predictable patterns. Better power sources lead to stronger weapons. Stronger weapons lead to better shields. Better shields lead to more powerful weapons. It's an arms race based entirely on energy technology. He picked up the bow, but this bypasses that entire system. This is something new. Or rather, something so old we forgot it existed. What happens now? Hyun asked. Now, Velmora said. We report this to the Federation War Council. They'll want to know about weapons that can defeat standard detection and defense systems, and they'll want to know what other surprises humanity might have. We're not a threat, Hyun said quietly. We're not trying to start conflicts. I know, Velmora said. But you've reminded the galaxy of something important. That sometimes the most dangerous weapons aren't the most advanced ones. They're the ones nobody expects. Back in the demonstration hall, the cadets were still discussing what they'd witnessed. Hyun returned to find a crowd waiting for him. To his surprise, Thrix was at the front of the group. The massive Gordanian looked uncomfortable. his gray face darker than usual. "Kang," he said, his voice quieter than normal. "I owe you an apology. I mocked you and your species. I called you primitive. I was wrong." Hyun blinked in surprise. "You were just confident in your own technology." "No," Thrix said firmly. "I was arrogant and ignorant. That shot you made? I couldn't do that with my plasma weapon. The targeting computer does all the work. But you did it with your own eyes and hands. That's a warrior's skill, not primitive weakness. He struggled for words. "That's impressive." He held out a massive hand. "Could you teach me how to shoot that weapon?" Hyun took the offered hand, which engulfed his own. "You want to learn?" "I want to learn how to fight without relying on technology that can fail," Thrix said. "Your people survived as apex predators using these methods. That's valuable knowledge." Other cadets pressed forward, asking questions. How did the bow work? Could anyone learn? How long did it take to master? What other weapons did humans have? Lyra appeared at his side, her scales bright with excitement. "The instructors are already talking about updating the curriculum. They're calling it the Kinetic Warfare Program. You're not just a student anymore, Kang. You're about to become an instructor." Hyun looked around at the crowd of eager alien faces, all wanting to learn from him. He thought about his grandfather, teaching him in the mountains. The old man had passed on knowledge that stretched back thousands of years. Now Hyun would pass it on again, but this time to beings from across the gala. 3 weeks after the demonstration, the Interstellar Combat Academy looked different. The weapons hall, once filled only with energy weapons and advanced technology, now had a section devoted to what the instructors called kinetic systems. Bows hung on the walls alongside plasma rifles. Arrows were stored next to antimatter cartridges. Traditional and modern, side by side. Hyun stood at the front of a classroom watching 20 cadets from 10 different species struggle with the bows he and Somin had helped them construct. It was harder than it looked, and most of them were learning that lesson the hard way. A Gordanian cadet, not Thrix but one of his friends, roared in frustration as his arrow sailed wide of the target for the 5th time. "How do you make it go straight?" "Practice," Hyun said simply. "And proper form. Your elbow is dropping when you release. Keep it level." The Gordanian tried again. This time the arrow at least hit the target wall, if not the center. He looked at Hyun with newfound respect. "This is much harder than using a plasma rifle." "Yes," Hyun agreed. "A plasma rifle does the work for you. The computer aims, calculates wind and distance, adjusts for target movement. The bow requires you to do all of that yourself. But that's also its strength. A bow works anywhere. No power cells to recharge. No computer systems to malfunction. No energy signature to give away your position." Lyra was doing better than most. Her smaller size actually helped as she didn't try to muscle the bow. She drew smoothly and released cleanly. Her arrow hit close to the target center. "Excellent," Hyun said. "You're learning to use technique instead of strength." Lyra's scales flickered with pleased pink colors. "My species is not strong like Gordanians. I always thought that made us weak warriors. But with this weapon, strength matters less than skill." "Exactly," Hyun said. "That's why humans developed these weapons. We weren't the strongest creatures on Earth. We were relatively weak and slow. But we were clever. We found ways to make up for our physical limitations." Across the room, Somin was helping a Veil cadet adjust the string tension on his bow. She had taken to the teaching role naturally, combining her engineering knowledge with Hyun's practical experience. Together they had designed training programs and equipment specifications. "You know," Somin said during a break, "I never thought I'd be teaching alien soldiers how to make weapons from furniture." "Engineering school didn't prepare me for this," Hyun smiled. "Life rarely prepares you for what actually happens. You just adapt." "Very human philosophy," Somin observed. "It's kept our species alive for a long time." The weeks turned into months. The kinetic warfare program expanded beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a curiosity became a required course for all combat cadets. Instructor Velmora herself attended several classes, learning alongside her students. One afternoon, she asked Hyun to demonstrate for a group of visiting military officials. He stood in the training range with his bow while a dozen high-ranking officers watched. "The advantage of kinetic weapons," Hyun explained, "is not just that they're simple. It's that they think differently. Modern warfare has become predictable. Both sides use energy weapons. Both sides have energy shields. Battles become competitions of whose power source is better. But kinetic weapons change the equation. He fired an arrow at a distant target. It hit dead center. This arrow cost almost nothing to make. It leaves no heat signature. It makes no sound. It requires no ammunition supply chain. And most importantly, it forces the enemy to defend against a threat they've forgotten about. A Threnian general, her forearms crossed thoughtfully, spoke up. But surely the range and power are limited compared to modern weapons. Yes, Hyun admitted. A bow can't match a plasma rifle for range or power. But war isn't always about overwhelming force. Sometimes it's about using the right tool for the situation. A special operations team that needs to stay hidden would benefit from silent weapons. A group trapped behind enemy lines with no power supply could make these weapons from local materials. Defenders in a city could arm civilians quickly with weapons that require only basic training. He knocked another arrow. Humans learned to think tactically because we had to. We couldn't just overpower our problems. We had to outsmart them. The demonstrations led to something bigger. The Federation War Council invited Hyun to present at their annual strategic conference. He found himself standing before military leaders from every major species in the galaxy, explaining concepts that his ancestors had understood 10,000 years ago. For too long, Hyun told them, galactic warfare has been locked into a single paradigm: bigger energy weapons, stronger shields, faster computers. But paradigms can be broken, sometimes by looking forward to new technology, and sometimes by looking backward to old wisdom. He showed them more than just bows. He demonstrated atlatls, ancient spear throwers that used leverage to increase throwing distance, slings that could hurl projectiles with devastating force, simple mechanical crossbows that even a child could operate, throwing stars and balanced knives, blowguns that could fire poisoned darts silently. Every one of these weapons is thousands of years old, Hyun said. Every one can be made from common materials. Every one is invisible to modern sensors. And every one is effective because nobody remembers to defend against them. The council was silent for a long time after his presentation. Then an elderly Sari admiral spoke. You've given us much to think about, Cadet Kang. Or should I say, Instructor Kang? I understand the Academy has offered you a teaching position upon graduation. They have, Hyun confirmed. I've accepted. Good, the admiral said. Because I suspect every military academy in the Federation will want to add this curriculum. You've reminded us that sometimes the old ways survive because they work, not because we're too primitive to find better ones. Back at the academy, Hyun's students had progressed significantly. Thrix could now consistently hit targets at 50 meters. His strength, once used to carry heavy plasma weapons, now powered a warbow that could punch through light armor. He had become one of Hyun's most dedicated students. I spent years thinking technology made me a better warrior, Thrix admitted one day. But technology is just a tool. The warrior is what matters. Your bow taught me that. Hyun watched his student practice. You know what's interesting? My grandfather used to say something similar. He said the bow was a mirror. It showed you who you really were. If you were impatient, it showed. If you were undisciplined, it showed. But if you were dedicated and focused, it rewarded you. Wise man, Thrix said, drawing and releasing smoothly. His arrow flew true. He was, Hyun agreed. He never imagined his lessons would be taught on a space station to alien species. But I think he'd be pleased that the knowledge continues. 6 months after the famous demonstration, the Academy held a special ceremony. Hyun stood before the graduating class as they prepared to return to their respective militaries. He had been asked to give a speech. When I first came to this academy, he began, I was told that humans had nothing to contribute to galactic warfare, that we were primitives from a backwater world with outdated technology. Some of you believed that. Some of you said it to my face. He paused, looking out at the assembled cadets. Many of them now wore small bow and arrow pins on their uniforms, a symbol of their completion of kinetic weapons training. Maybe it was true, Hyun continued. Maybe we are primitives. But I've learned something here, and I hope you have too. Being primitive isn't about lacking technology. It's about lacking adaptability. It's about being so locked into one way of thinking that you can't see alternatives. He held up a simple arrow. This arrow represents 70,000 years of human innovation. Generations of people refining a tool, passing knowledge from parent to child, adapting and improving. It has no circuits to hack, no power source to drain, no energy signature to track. It requires skill, practice, and understanding. Setting the arrow down, he continued. Humanity didn't come to the stars to teach you how to go backward. We came to remind you that sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the most technological one. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the one with the most power. It's the one that fits the situation. It's the one your enemy doesn't expect. It's the one that you can make anywhere, anytime from whatever is available. That's the real human weapon. Not the bow itself, but the thinking behind it, the adaptability, the resourcefulness, the ability to look at a desk and see a weapon, to look at any problem and find a solution. The audience was silent, listening intently. So take this knowledge back to your fleets and armies, Hyun said. Remember that technology is a tool, not a crutch. Remember that sometimes old solutions work better than new ones. And remember that the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest weapon, but the one who can adapt to any situation. The applause started slowly, then grew, until the hall echoed with it. Cadets from across the galaxy stood and cheered for the human who had taught them to see warfare differently. After the ceremony, Velmora approached Hyun. "You've changed this academy," she said. "Changed it for the better. The cadets don't just learn to use weapons now. They learn to think about weapons, to question assumptions, to find creative solutions. That's all any teacher can hope for," Hyun said. "Your grandfather would be proud," Velmora said. "I hope so."